Welcome to the College Football X with your hosts, John Nelson and John Wilkerson.
Welcome back to the College Football X here on the OSG Sports Network, and it's time to run the anchor leg, and for this, we brought in the heavy artillery. We can now add the title of author to ESPN's Lauren Sisler, and for those watching on the video side of things, I have a book that Lauren has put together, and we're going to ask her about it and about life and all these kinds of things. Shatterproof now out. Congratulations, one author to another.
Thank you, John. I so appreciate it, man. I tell you what, it is a labor of love, as you know, putting this thing together and spending a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of tears, a lot of joy, just the emotion of it all. But such a cool place to be. And it's kind of like, it's definitely a pinch me moment. Like when you say, oh, like add this to her title, you know, it's not lost on me at like the significance of that. Just to be able to like finally say I wrote a book, you know, it's pretty cool.
I was going to ask about the whole why now, as opposed to times in the past, maybe other ideas that might have come across. Why a book? Why now? Obviously, we'll get to the subject matter in a bit, but why?
Yeah, why now? Such a great question, because I do think that, you know, first of all, our stories are always being written. And there was times throughout this process, you know, really many years in this timeline where people are like, oh, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. And I was just like, oh, I don't even know how to write a book. Like, what do you mean? Like, how does this process even work? You know? And also too, like in the sports world, like I'm a conversationalist. So I talk in sound bites. Like, so what even does it mean to write a book? And so for me, that really just became like the recognition that when I do share my story, whether it's a podcast, a show, up on stage, you know, at speaking events, there's so many layers to the story that I don't even get to touch on. And for me, even too, there were so many layers of the story that I didn't even comprehend and had no idea the depths of it. And so writing a book really forced me to dig deeper and to maybe have a better understanding of the why and the how and the timeline and everything else. And I think honestly, you know, it's been such a healing process, healing journey for me personally. And then just to be able to gift that to other people has just been such a cool experience so far in just like the early weeks that this book has been out and available.
From beginning of, yeah, okay, I'm going to sit down and do this finally, because I know that there have been people with my projects in the past. They'll sit there and say, will you finish the book? Will you finish the book? Will you write the book? Will you go ahead and do it? From the moment that you finally sat down and started banging this out on a computer to completion, how long of a process are we talking here?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I went the hybrid route, which is through Hybrid Books. So, you know, I kind of toyed around with the idea. Do I go the traditional route? Do I shop it around? Do I try to find an agent? Do I try to find, well, you know, how am I going to do this? And ultimately, I knew I needed to find a co-writer, somebody that was going to help me put pen to paper and really organize things, organize my thoughts. Because again, let's be real, I'm a conversationalist. So I talk in sound bites and really being able to dig in. And so I will say that was kind of the interesting part of the process is like the starting point of that, finding the right company to do it. So you know, I met somebody, you know, that has a publishing company that kind of does this hybrid model and partnered me with Holland Webb, who ended up being my co-writer. And it's interesting because I knew nothing about him, doesn't have a sports background. But this isn't really a sports book. There are sports stories tied in, but you know, this is really a memoir, inspirational kind of redemption story. And from the time that I was essentially introduced to this publisher to when let's just say when I decided, okay, I'm going to do this, you know, talk to on the phone my co-writer, and that would have been in February of 2.5 years ago. So, I mean, really, it took all of 2.5 years to get this thing done. We could have had it done a year sooner, and we did have the book itself done a year sooner. Of course, you go through these, I want to make this change. I want to do this. I want to do that. Like literally it never ends. And like, I'm still doing that, right? Oh, I want to change this or I want to add this.
Human copy editor. I'm right there with you.
I mean, gosh, come on. But yeah, really, it took about 2.5 years from start to finish to get to that place. And two, I had a baby in the middle of all of it. So the idea of releasing the book last fall was a great idea. And I think that we felt confident we could do it. But personally, I just didn't feel I was ready and I didn't feel confident in that. And I just felt like I was just so overwhelmed with learning how to be a mom that I said, you know what, like I need to take a step back and enjoy this journey. Because I do think, John, that it's easy. You get to that goal line, right? You've been like running down the field. You're like, oh, we're almost there. You get to that goal line and it's time to like do the celebration dance. But like you want to keep yourself grounded and enjoy the journey. I mean, it's exhausting. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm literally trying to be a mom and I'm traveling for football season and doing obviously all this media stuff for the book. It's been great, but it's trying to stay grounded in it too and enjoy it and soak it up, because it is a lifelong work. It's my entire life, like on 215 pages.
When it came to finally deciding to do it because of the subject matter, and we can get into that as we go, how difficult a decision was it to look at yourself in the mirror and sit there and say, yes, okay, if I can help one person along the journey here, then it's worth it. And it also helps me inside and those that are in my orbit. It helps us all hopefully heal and continue to go forward in all of this. How difficult a decision was that to look in the mirror?
Yeah, I think that what a great question, because here's the thing. Obviously, I've been sharing my story for several years now. And to be honest with you, I didn't know that I would experience this level of healing because, I have been sharing it openly and there's a lot of shame associated with it. And like you said, we'll get into that, but a lot of shame associated with the story. But now that I've been so open and vocal, I have felt that level of freedom that has just come from being vulnerable and transparent and just open book. I didn't realize that, not knowing very much about the layers of the story, the depths of the story, how much healing would come on the back end of that. And a lot of that was just, things happen non-coincidentally. I think you're put in the right place at the right time. As a woman of faith, I truly believe that. And there were people that I came in contact with, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm writing this book and this thing happens, and I'm now suddenly doors open for me to learn more information about the events that led to that day, that led to the tragic passing of both of my parents within 5 hours or 6 hours of each other. And it's just crazy how you don't realize in that process, like sometimes you kind of lay the questions to rest and you say, okay, like you're never going to find out. But then all of a sudden it's like in this process, like all these questions start percolating again. And honestly, finding so much peace in the answers that I received was really cool.
How difficult was it to piece the puzzle together going back? Because you lay out your own feelings, you lay out your memories with all of the days and your early childhood and what it was like in the family, and then pushing through it and then developing from there. How difficult was it to assemble all of these puzzle pieces about the day and the surroundings involving your parents' passings? That seems like it's a puzzle that you want to put together for the sake of a book, but you don't. Do you want to know? Do I want to know all these things? It seems like a difficult puzzle to piece together at times.
Oh yeah, very difficult. And in many ways, it's almost like I had to become an investigative journalist and, like, okay, put the investigation hat on. And that was the thing. Holland and I were very adamant that we wanted to get this as close to being as accurate as possible. Right. And it truly is hard because I was not in the house. I was at Rutgers University on gymnastics scholarship the day that I got the call from my dad that my mom had died. And he said, get on the next plane you can. I'll be at the airport to pick you up. And he never showed up that day, and he too passed away. I was not there. I was not in the house. I didn't know the chain of events. I didn't understand the chain of events. I didn't understand like the what and the why. And there was that tug of war a little bit, right, John? Like like how much do I want to know? Do I really want to know? What purpose does this serve at this juncture? Like, how is this going to help? Could it hurt things? So there was definitely a lot of that. But I am the perfectionist in me, the gymnast, right? We operate on the 10.0, performance scale. So I had to have I wanted it as close to being as accurate as possible. So I just went in circles, like just trying to piece this thing together. And it was so hard because let me tell you, toxicology reports that took me 10 years, by the way, to open up and read, ran from that for many, many years. Even looking at that, you think, okay, well, this probably will tell us a lot of things. I mean, it's a death certificate. It tells you cause of death. It tells you around the time. There's literally 3 paragraphs in there. 3 paragraphs that tell the story of a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, that within 6 hours of each other pass away and are living in this house together, doing life together, seemingly on the outside, everything's fine, everything's okay. And you literally have 3 paragraphs to look at and say, so this is it? Like this, like what? And it doesn't tell the story. And honestly, it took me meeting several people along the way. And one of those people happened to be the deputy that responded to the call that morning, when the call came in that my dad had collapsed and died. He was the one that showed up at the house with another deputy. And I actually came in contact with him because I spoke at my high school. His son was in the audience. His son was an 8th grader. His son went home to dad and said, Dad, this ESPN reporter came and spoke at my school today, started sharing the story. And that's when Eric, Deputy Twaits, said, son, I was the one that responded to the call that day. And we're talking, this was 19 years removed from that day. And he said the emotions just came flooding back. And just to be reconnected with him, for him to share some of those details and what was going through his mind, what was going through everybody's mind that morning when this all happened. I mean, you can't script that out. Like, just to be able to have met him and now to have a close bond with him and his wife and his family and his sons, like, it's amazing. And it really became the bookends to the story. And it uncovered so many things that I'm so grateful for. And not the morbid details, not the details that like make you just cringe. It's just the details that help to explain how we ended up here, and puts a little bit of closure on things, I guess.
ESPN's Lauren Sisler hanging out with us, running the anchor leg this week on the College Football X Shatterproof, how I overcame the shame of losing my parents to opioid addiction and found my Sideline shimmy, now out on hardcover. Full disclosure, I got mine, reading it. So I'm learning about things that are difficult as we go. And you mentioned the idea of all of the details and learning all of these different aspects of it. How many folks have come up to you, just as you've told your story before the book and now that the book is out? How many folks have come up to you and expressed a kindredship, a thank you for, hey, I'm going through something similar, or I'm going through the same thing that you were. Thank you for walking these steps with me so I know what I might be facing in my universe. How much kindredship are you getting to share here?
Oh, it's been overwhelmingly amazing. As you mentioned before the book, obviously going up on stage, getting to share it at speaking events, sharing it openly on social media. I think a lot of that comes to the nature of the story. A lot of people might be sitting here wondering what happened to your parents. And I know that we haven't really dove into that. And partially because I'll tell you, it took me years to figure that out. It took me years to acknowledge it. It took me years to accept it. So when I, openly share their story, it takes a while to get to that part of the story to understand and comprehend what happened to both my parents. But essentially, both my parents died of overdoses. Both of my parents were battling addiction. Both of my parents were battling a secret addiction that we as a family had no idea about. They were going to a pain management doctor, getting prescribed narcotics. And at some point in time, while they were taking those prescription drugs, they became addicted to them and started to misuse and abuse them, which therefore ultimately took their lives when they started to misuse the fentanyl patches that my mom was prescribed. And there's such a level of shame associated with that. Never could imagine my parents being drug addicts. Could never imagine my parents abusing medication and ultimately dying from it. And so coming forward and owning that story, owning my story, owning their story, every single chapter of it has really opened the door for other people to have permission, to have courage, so when someone reaches out to me and says, thank you, what I say back to that is thank you for your courage, because it took you courage to be able to come back full circle and say, you know what, I'm going to reach out to her. I've got this thing going on. I'm going through this with my family. I have an experience. And I think that's the beauty of it, and really the foundation for why I did it in the first place. To give people the courage and strength to say, hey, whatever it is you're walking through, whatever shame it is you're going through, whether it's addiction and all different shapes, sizes, and forms, or something shameful you've gone through in your life, a mistake you've made, a job you got fired from, you know, maybe your finances are in disarray and you're about to go under and go bankrupt. I don't know. But whatever it is, I hope to meet you there, have this conversation and let you know, hey, it's okay. You're going to bounce back. You are going to bounce back. But ultimately, you got to own your story, because I think that is what drives people to be able to find that ownership and then find that purpose in their lives and recognize that, hey, maybe that mistake, maybe that challenge, maybe that setback actually positioned me to find success, to bounce back and find resilience. And so I just love, John, when, you know, these messages come back to me, because I recognize them as like a courageous act for someone to say, hey, me too. I've been through this. I've been through something similar, or I've had this similar experience, and I'm ready to own my story and fall in love with my story now.
With your parents, how long did it take for you to get past the feelings of the anger, the betrayal, the why didn't they tell me I could have helped kinds of things, to where the water's a little calmer now, where you can talk about it and address it and be that sounding board for folks who might be going through the same thing? Or is it still something that you navigate on a daily basis?
Oh yeah. I mean, um, the anger piece was for sure there, because you get blindsided by it. And you're just like, wait, how is this happening for so many years in front of us and we didn't know? Why didn't you tell mom and dad? Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you ask for help? Why didn't you find your voice in all of this? Cry for help. We would have helped you. We would have done anything to help you. And so there was that anger and almost like feeling of selfishness. Like, why would you not tell us? So that, you know, that was definitely a big part of the grief process, especially early on. And, you know, I will say even now, when you hit milestones, right? So they passed away when I was a freshman in college, March 24th of 2003. So then I graduate from college. You know, I get married and I get this job on ESPN. And, you know, I think about like those missed opportunities, right? The not being at my graduation, not turning on the TV to watch me and celebrate like this awesome like jump in my career, and like, you know, those moments, and then walking down the aisle, you know, having to walk down the aisle alone, and now having a 15-month-old son, almost 16 months, like being here and having to eventually tell him why my parents are no longer with us, why his grandparents, why he'll never have the opportunity to meet them. It's challenging. It's really challenging at times to think about that. So you do experience the anger. And while I feel like the anger is dissipated, there are still moments where I'm like, you know, a little bit like, man, like I wish, like the I wish. You wake up and you say, man, I wish they were here for this. I wish they were here to watch my son take his first steps. And, you know, those milestones are so important, and, you know, they get missed out on now. And, you know, it makes it hard. But I will say that through this process, there was a fear early on that my last vision of them would be of them laying in their caskets, sad and broken, because that's what I saw. That's the vision I saw. That's what I saw in their faces. I was so afraid of that, John. So afraid that that was going to be the last image I saw of them. And when I take myself back to that funeral home and look into those caskets now, it's like a blurry screen. I can't see their faces anymore. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because to me, I think that a lot of that has been wiped clean. And really, my focus is on the love that they shared, the love that they provided for us, the unconditional love. And yes, while going through challenges, they were not perfect people. I'm not a perfect person. It's also perspective, like a perspective on life. Like, I get to be a parent now, and I get to be Mason's mom. And while I know I'm going to be far from perfect, there's things that I've taken from my parents and what they taught me and breathed into me through life that I carry with me and will pass along to my son. But there's also things I learned that I don't want to do, that I want to do differently, that I want to try differently. And I think that's the beauty in being able to bring perspective when you face significant trauma, tragedy, and loss.
You walk through a door. Could be a house with a blurry front door, however you want to picture it. Could be back in Giles. Could be in the Central Time Zone, God's time zone, as I'm told by the boss here in this household. You go walking through a door, and it is the most perfectly laid out den, living room, dining room that you could ever imagine in your head. Your mom and dad are sitting on that sofa. They're maybe watching a college football game that they might have watched on the Plus, where someone might have been shimmying on the sidelines. You go walking through that door, you see the two of them watching you now. What do you think their first response is when you go bursting through that door with your family?
Mm, mm, mm. Oh, I knew you were gonna get deep on this. Oh, what a good question. That's so good. I am envisioning it now too. It's funny because I'm looking at the house that we lived in for the latter part of my life after we went to high school. Thinking about like just the times that we all spent together watching sports. We were huge sports fans, and so obviously college football was always on, NFL on Sundays. Gosh, it would be pretty amazing. You can pull the tears out.
Unintentional.
You did that on purpose.
Unintentional.
I'm an ugly crier. You have to just be prepared.
Right there with you.
It's pretty cool though. Just to think that, they would be able to see their little girl who worked so hard to not let this tragedy take her away.
And that's all you need sometimes. You go walking in the door, and I have been told by folks who are far wiser than I that those who are not here with us on this plane are with us on other planes, and they watch and they see, and we are supposed to be comforted by the fact that they are right off our shoulders and that they are watching this the entire time. And so
Entire time, every single ounce and moment.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, John, a special moment for me that really brings me closer to my parents when I am on the football field. Because I do think about like, my mom, like I could just like hear her like calling me up after a game or like texting me. Of course back then like there was no texting, but my parents would have figured it out. Hey, like your hair looks beautiful, your outfit looks beautiful. I always get that encouragement from my husband. Like if I have a good hit, oh, great hit, great interview, or oh, just move past that one.
Oh yeah, I get that one a lot.
I get that too. I'm like, I need the encouragement just to compartmentalize, box it up, and throw it away. So I can imagine just having that, and my dad he is just like that loud, piercing whistle, just like so enamored by like every word, everything that comes out of my mouth. In gymnastics, it was every landing. Every single skill that I did, it was like a perfect 10. But I think what's so cool is when I go out on the football field, much like when I was in gymnastics, the national anthem would play. And that was my moment to really kind of like sort of be in the moment and like calm the nerves. And, I could always kind of feel my heart racing, and it's like, it's competition day and my hands are starting to sweat. And I know like I'm about to go out here and compete. And in gymnastics, you got 4 events. You got to go, one up, one down, one up, one down. And so like, that was the time where I would just put my hand over my heart. I could hear my heart beating and I would just, pray to God, like, let me get through this. Let me have a great meet. And it would just be a grounding moment. And the same thing happens now in college football. When I step foot out there, national anthem comes on, like I might be busy doing something, blah, blah, blah. I drop everything and I like put my feet on the ground. I can just feel it. And that is the time that I go talk to the good Lord above and my parents and just say, hey, like, I feel you, you're with me. Like, and I know they're there. And it's like this presence that is so incredible. And, in some ways, like you said, it's kind of like the plane, they're watching and it's, they while I do anything to bring them back, I know they're there with me for every game. And I know if they were still living on this earth, they wouldn't be able to get on a plane and travel to every single game with me because it about kills me. And I'm sure it wouldn't be easy on them either. It also helps when your company pays for it. It gets quite pricey flying across the country when you got to book your flight about three days out from your game. But with that being said, just such a special moment and opportunity to talk to them. And that is so cool. Like now you've got my mind thinking, like I can just see them like sitting in the living room right now and watching me on TV and being like, "Oh, that's our girl," and like my dad just blowing that whistle and just being so excited, like to see me out there performing again. That's pretty special. So I should have guessed you were gonna bring me to tears. But
Yeah,
good tears, like
I
happy tears. Like I love moments like this, and that's something I would say too. Is like sometimes people are afraid to show their emotion. I'm definitely not afraid to, but honestly, moments like this, when I can even just break down and like let it all out, I'm just like, it's to me, it's almost invigorating in some ways because it's almost like you just,
mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah, you can take that big piercing breath and just let it go out, and then everything comes back to center, and you start it all over again.
yeah,
Uh,
uh-huh.
Sometimes when you write a book, it is the literary and reporting equivalent to landing a Sukahara layout. I mean, it is.
Whoa, did you just use Sukahara?
Yeah.
Look at you, big dog. I
I
like
mean,
it.
I am talking to a gymnast. I can't do cowboy layout to a full front or anything like that. I figured I would drop a Sukahara layout on you. Two quick things before we get you out of here because I know you're busy. Have you ever either under shimmied or over shimmied on the sidelines?
Under or over? Well,
Or is every shimmy its own independent shimmy and has its own level of acceptance?
it does have its own level of acceptance. Now, it depends on who you're asking, because there's just some people on social media that are like, get out of here, old mom, da 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 da. And I'm like, you know what? You can just unfollow me. Like, you don't have to watch. Like, just swipe. Like, that's the whole beauty of the social media. Swipe. You ain't got to see it. I will say though, I do have a lot of fun. Actually, was at a Tulane game this past weekend, Tulane, North Texas, and I'd seen one of their receivers on the field like dancing, and I'm like, okay, if they win this game, I'm gonna ask him if he'll dance with me. It's always fun to get in with the players too. I think they enjoy it, and it's just I don't claim to dance well, so like when I say sideline shimmy, like it's not like I'm not that coordinated. I
I'm
just
always searching for the 2s and 4s myself. So, I mean, I'm right there with you.
yeah, sometimes I will say sometimes you get crappy music and you're just like, well, dang, man, like, I need some good music. I don't, I gotta have something a little better to move the body to. But then a lot of times, it's just kind of just let it go. And again, it's been a grounding exercise for me. So I talk about like the nerves and stuff as you go out for competition. Same thing. The sideline shimmy just helps to calm the nerve. Puts me back on the ground, allows me to kind of shake off the nerves. Cause yeah, I get nervous on TV. Of course I do, but I love that adrenaline that you get, and that nervousness and anxiousness is all part of the gig. But some people would argue that, I've got better sideline shimmies than but for me, again, it's not even just like putting on a show. For me, it's like an actual intentional, like helps to calm me down. But then I also found the joy that it brought to other people, and the fact that, I go post it and it's like, all right, well, love it or hate it, love it or leave it. Here it is. So it's been fun. And, as a former DJ, I love to dance, love to play music. So, it's kind of my alter ego. It's like, got to have something to keep me young and vibrant, right?
Take the turntable, hit the cue speaker, roll it back a half turn, and then you know that when you hit play that it'll hit flush and you'll go right at 33 1/3 or 45. Everything.
Look at you. I love it.
Okay.
You got the gymnastics down, you got the DJ, the mixing, the 1s and 2s. Let's go.
For me, it's 2s and 4s. Shatterproof: How I Overcame the Shame of Losing My Parents and Opioid Addiction and Found My Sideline Shimmy, out on hardcover now. Read it, buy it, learn from it. And when you see a sideline shimmy, it's always nice to shimmy back. Lauren, it's great to see you. You have golden ticket status as always. You can crash the party whenever you want. You got my contact info. Go and take a breath before your next thing here as we're taping today. Get out of here.
Hey, appreciate you, John. Thanks for everybody for listening. Hit me up at Lauren Sisler. Would love to hear from you. Got a story, want to chat, hang out, all the things, whatever. My DMs are open. Hit me up. Hey, and yes, John, you are right. Let's get this sideline shimmy thing going. So if you want to show me your sideline shimmy, tag me in it, hashtag it sideline shimmy. I got you. All right. Bring it to me. John, you're the best. Be good, my man.
That is it for the OSG College Football X. We're out because we are long, but we don't care. We'll see you next week, everybody.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our X page, formerly known as Twitter, at OSG Sports for a comment, rant, or just whatever is on your mind about college football.